Hello, everyone. So my name's Simon from Indigo Thinking. I'm going to do a six questions interview today with my friend and colleague and co-founder of Indigo Thinking, Paula Haig. So we're doing a six questions round of six questions to try and capture some real life scenarios and situations in circumstances where we can touch on the things that really matter and share our experience with these things in a bid to engage, debate and hopefully get people to see that they aren't alone. And reaching out for help is 100% beneficial and an act of self-care. So I'm gonna get straight on with the questions, Paula, because I'm really excited to do this with you and find out what your experience is around this. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, so Simon said we work under the banner of Indigo Thinking, which we're both really proud of, and we've worked together, we've trained together, and we've come up with this concept of six questions, which I'm really looking forward. Well, I think I'm really looking forward to being asked. We'll see.
Okay, brilliant. Well, let's just get going and then see where this goes. Thanks, Paula. Um, so the topic is trauma and chronic illness.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fire in with the first question, which is, in your opinion, Paul, what is a chronic illness and how does that link into trauma?
Okay, I think I need to say first and foremost, I'm not a doctor. This is just from experience. A chronic illness, my understanding of a chronic illness is something that continues for it can be something that you have for at least a year and then longer. And it can be anything like arthritis, it can be fibromyalgia, it can be a skin complaint. It's something that you don't seem to be able to get a handle on and needs continuous care and treatment, and something that impacts your life or your quality of life. In terms of how it links to trauma, again, I think this is it can be a personal reflection. My own belief is that we absorb emotion in the same way that we might react to certain foods or alcohol or something that is negative to our well-being. We react to it in the same way. So if something isn't good for us, our bodies will tell us. And that's, to me, that in my opinion, that's what chronic illness can represent. But I don't necessarily think we automatically link emotional trauma or upset to our physical body. We are kind of programmed to separate the two. And as I've got older and had more experience, and obviously through this training and working with my own clients, I can see an intrinsic link between all of them. So that's my understanding of chronic illness and trauma.
Thank you, Paula. What a really informative answer. I really appreciate your input with this as well, especially with your own personal experience with this. Um, so I wanted to ask you, when and how did you become aware that something wasn't right? And did you try to wish it away before you had to accept your diagnosis?
Wish it away. That's a great question. When is an interesting question as well, Simon, because I have a sense when I reflect back, I have a sense that I never seem to have the same amount of energy as other people. I always seem to be a little bit poorly or not have something that wasn't quite right. Even from quite a young age, I remember going to school with medicine. And but as I got older, I think it first hit me when I was at university, when everybody was out partying all night and then getting up and doing the lectures and then partying all night, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I felt absolutely ill. I felt ill, exhausted. And I guess I was, yeah, wishing it away. I was pretending it wasn't there, maybe. I was pretending that I was okay. But it got to a point where I would wake up every morning and think, this isn't right. I'm not right, especially as I was younger. I think because you compare yourself a lot when you're a lot younger. You want to be like everybody else. and I wasn't. So it's taken me years of acceptance. I think I'm even now I struggle with acceptance in terms of how I am and in comparison to other people. And I do try not to do that, but it's quite difficult when you see the pace that other people live their life compared to the pace that I now live mine.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Really powerful that especially when you said about remembering going to school with medicine. It,
Mm.
you know, I didn't realize it had started to affect you that early.
Well, I mean, when I went to finally see a professional about my condition, I was diagnosed with ME about 25 years ago. He did a kind of a timeline, and he
Okay.
wanted to know everything that happened in my life as well as my illnesses, because he connected the two together. And his opinion is that this sort of thing can happen, it can start to happen pre-birth, because
Mm,
we're influenced by what's going on around us, I suppose, as babies. So
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, and it's just stuff that is going on in people's lives that, when you're little, you don't really have any control over. So
No, thank you, Paula. So next I was going to ask you, what are the warning signs when this type of illness starts to affect your day or days, and what have you learned to do to combat your symptoms?
Um, well, I think my personality is very much has always been very much I will push and push and push until I break.
Mm,
Uh, which yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So I tried really hard for it not to affect me, and I think I just tried to push through until I simply couldn't do that anymore. Um, and then I needed to seek out treatment. So in terms of how I combated my symptoms initially, I needed to find out what was wrong with me. And like a lot of chronic illnesses, they give off lots of different symptoms. So going to the doctor, you'd get you get diagnosed with one thing, then another thing, then another thing, but tying them together never seemed to happen. And I reckon it took about 20 years to diagnose me with chronic fatigue.
wow.
Yeah, and all of the symptoms that they tested me for, and the blood tests, and the diagnosis that they gave me, they are all part of an ME diagnosis, but they can also be seen in individually. So depression or joint pain or brain fog or headaches, they all can be symptomatic of something else. So I was very fortunate. My mum read a little clip in a women's magazine, I think, of some description, and it was to do with a gentleman who'd devised a diagnosis, because the NHS didn't really diagnose. They diagnosed by elimination rather than diagnose specifically. So it's not this, it's not this, it must be this.
Okay.
And he was able to diagnose it. And he put a treatment plan together for me, which was around lymphatic drainage, because of the need to detoxify and clear my system out, my nervous system out,
Okay.
and nutrition, which again was about trying to keep everything clean and healthy and not absorb as many toxins. But interestingly, it was only when I then took on psychotherapy that I started to look at that sort of toxicity that I was holding, and that's when I really started to get better. So I was getting better, but it was
Yeah.
when I started to have psychotherapy that I really started to improve.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank
Mm.
you. Um, could you describe how your mental health may suffer due to the physical dilemmas you sometimes have to endure?
Yeah, I think when I add up kind of my personality, which is, I've always been quite driven, work hard, I don't give a lot of time to myself, then not being able to do any of that stuff, I got quite angry. I think there was a lot of it's not fair, why me? Um, I think I've often felt, I guess, ashamed that I couldn't fix some because I like to fix things. Ashamed that I couldn't fix what was going on, although I did try really hard and I was getting better, but I was also impatient. And yeah, I think it then can relate to a sort of feeling of powerlessness. And you know, like what else? What else can I do, really? And then finally acceptance, because ironically, you know, the more anger, the more energy you put into fighting it, the worse you get.
Wow.
So, you know, anger takes up a lot of energy, doesn't it? It takes up a lot
Yeah.
of, you know, it can do you harm to be angry all the time. And it definitely didn't help my recovery. So that's why the psychotherapy helped, I think, because I started to understand and be compassionate for myself and make peace with what was happening.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow, that sounds really difficult when to hear you say it. I mean, I've heard you say it before, but when you reiterate what it's like to be in that combat of getting angry and then that taking all your energy, it just
Mm.
sounds so difficult, Paula.
Yeah,
I just
it's
wonder,
like a constant bargain with yourself, with myself, you know,
yeah,
in terms of what I'm prepared to be passionate about and what I'm not, because I've realized adrenaline is not my friend. I know a lot of people like adrenaline, they feed off adrenaline, but it's exhausting for me to be really heightened with my emotions. So I kind of try and keep everything quite calm.
sure.
But then that also takes away that opportunity to get really excited and animated about stuff, you know,
Yeah,
because that can be quite exhausting as well. So it's a constant choosing my battles. I guess that's the best way to put it. I kind of choose my
yeah,
battles, you know, and think, right, well, this is worth investing in, or this person's worth investing in, and this time, you know, this like indigo thinking, for example, you know, that's something that I really passionate about, but is a supportive environment for me. So I don't feel like I'm getting my energy drained in a negative way
yeah,
by that. And sometimes it's worth just wiping your energy. It's sometimes for me, I think, oh, it'll be worth it. It's worth being tired because I'm really enjoying doing this and I don't mind paying for it tomorrow. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, the fact that there is that conversation in my head about having to pay for something, that's a difficult conversation to have as well.
yeah,
That, you know, that I'm being almost being punished or some, I don't know, that it's tricky. It's a tricky bargain to constantly kind of have in my head.
yeah. Again, really insightful answer, Paula.
Hmm.
Thank you for putting us in the picture with that. Um, I suppose that on the back of that one, it's like I want to know about how does therapy come into play there, and what's been the benefits of that for you?
Oh, I can't even begin to tell you, Si, to be honest. I mean, what therapy's done for me is remove any blame from myself. And that's not to put it on anyone else,
No,
but it's about acceptance and self-compassion um and understanding that my path is my path and I don't need to compare my path to other people's. That what, you know, what I've experienced in my life is simply that it was an experience, and understanding what I can control and what I can't control
yeah,
and what it might look like to actually not need to control. Heaven
mm,
forbid I don't control everything, you know, because keeping everything really contained is what has kept, or I thought was keeping me safe, but
yeah,
it was also keeping me in a cycle of fear. And what I have experienced through therapy, I understand now, is that fear is probably the most powerful emotion that I feel around this condition, because when I get myself into a very kind of balanced place, I don't want to deviate from that.
yeah,
But there's so much that I might miss out if I do. If I don't sort of just get a bit braver and step out and see what happens. So it's allowed me, I guess what therapy does is allow me to dip my toe in and then come back out and assess.
yeah,
Because I've got someone that I can reflect that back onto. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. You make sense. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So hugely beneficial. And the more people I talk about in this world, and I'm sure you've done the same, you know, people who do holistic treatments, reflexology, acupuncture, anything that's kind of detoxifying, they're talking to me and they say, oh, even physio and osteopathy, they're saying to me, their pain isn't physical pain, it's traumatic pain, it's emotional pain. They're holding on to tightness in their shoulders, pains in their neck, their lower back, they're, and our bodies are trying to tell us something and we don't listen.
Wow. Yeah.
So you go and you seek help, you think, oh, physio will fix me because I've got a bad back. Maybe not. Maybe there's a joined up approach here, and I'm always really keen to work with those people and try and do some of that joined up thinking, to figure out when did the pain start, what triggered it off, because there's a story behind everything that's happening to our bodies, that we need to take notice of.
Yeah, I really like that, because it is so multifaceted, isn't it? And it's like that,
Mm.
a great place in therapy is to explore every part of that and see which doors get opened into how much of a part that plays. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
So the next question is, how do you feel is the best way to give your loved ones the information they need to be able to help you more and support you in the right way?
Oh, that's a good question. This is a tricky one actually for me because uh and going back to what we've just been saying, because nobody knows how I feel. And I do get kind of sick of saying, oh, I'm tired, or I can't do that, or I'm not going there. So in that question, I think the key for me is to actually, what I've done a lot of work on is finding out who my loved ones actually are.
Wow, yeah,
Who those people. I mean, there's obviously fundamentally there's my family, which are amazing, and they're never going to go anywhere. And they've known this about me for a really long time.
yeah,
But then it's about, I've done a lot of keeping myself safe from people who are going to roll their eyes and say, "Oh, tired? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, welcome to my world." Because
yeah,
it's people do, don't they? They
yeah,
don't get it. So
sure,
I
yeah,
think a lot of this question is very much about finding out who those people are, and that's about for me, dipping my toe in and seeing what their reaction is going to be, and being
okay,
quite
yeah,
hesitant, quite careful with myself and protective of myself, but not in a way that's going to keep me from people. Um,
yeah,
and that's again quite a hard bargaining situation to be in. And going on this training has exposed me to opportunities to do that in a really safe, supportive way, which I'm so grateful for. And I've met people like yourself, that I would never have met, that just accept me for who I am, and it's love. It's just wonderful. So those people, I don't actually have to give a lot of information to.
okay, yeah,
Yeah, which again saves my energy
I
because
love
they're
that.
just
Yeah.
they're just I know that they are consistent and safe, I suppose.
Oh, thanks, Paula. Yeah, I like how you I like how you changed the angle of that question because it touched on what was important for you, which is that it's the new people that you meet rather than the people that you know. That's where
Mm.
that's where that's where you have to gauge how and where to spend your energy, isn't it? And yeah,
Yeah, it's taking a risk, when risk for me equals um payback. Risk can mean a drain of energy and a real anxiety inducing situation. So that's another way to sort of gauge where you're at with people, for me personally.
okay,
Mm.
okay. Thanks, Paula. And finally, what advice would you give through your personal experience on how somebody with a chronic illness might better take care of themselves and what works for you?
Okay. I would, well, if somebody's in a position where they're acknowledging that they have a chronic illness, and
Mm,
however that's come about, uh, be curious. Ask yourself why. Um, because there's a reason. Our bodies don't just get ill for fun. We don't listen. You know, we're not kind to ourselves. You know,
No.
and I know I'm sort of saying that as a coverall. Not everybody is that way, but you know, if we said what we said to ourselves to other people, we'd probably get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I know I would, but you know, I would say be curious. Try to get an idea of a pattern of illness. You know, what happens, what triggers your illness? Is there something anxiety inducing about your illness? Ask questions about yourself. And that's not always easy. You know, you might be going to a place you really don't want to go. But what I've experienced personally is that you can seek out help out there all day long for years and years and years, and you will get it. But if you're not prepared to really help yourself by finding out the reason, finding out the source,
Okay.
then you won't really access your healing as well as you could. So it's giving yourself an opportunity to look at yourself as a whole. I think, you know, our orthodox methodology in this country is to, you know, give you a cream, give you a tablet, have an operation, and that all works. And that, you know, for a lot of people, that is really helpful, and it has helped me. But if this situation keeps reoccurring, there is a reason why it keeps reoccurring. And it's to be, yeah, just start being asking yourself some questions if you can. Or get somebody to help you to ask those questions. You know, we don't know what we don't know, do we?
No. True.
Yeah.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your experience and advice on those 6 questions, Paula. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. And thank you for asking. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you again soon with another 6 questions. So from Indigo Thinking, thank you and
Thank you.
goodbye. Thanks.